This is Dr. Jerome Corsi, and today it's Monday. It's February 19th, 2024. Thank you for joining us on thetruthcentral.com. We're doing a podcast every weekday. You can find me on X at CorsiJerome1, altogether all small letters. And Substack is JeromeCorsiPhD.substack.com. We're doing a lot more broadcasting on Clout Hub right now. And encourage you to watch us. We're in a news slot on Cloud Hub every early evening. I believe it's in the 6 o'clock slot. Take a look. We're going to cover a lot of stories today, but first, I just can't pass up showing you the video here of this great admiral that we have in the United States. This is our military these days, and this is Admiral Rachel Levine. And you won't believe what this admiral is talking about because, of course, this is really high priority military intelligence. Why don't you play it here, Chris?
Hello, I'm Admiral Rachel Levine. This Black History Month, I'm pleased to partner with OMH in advancing better health through better understanding for Black communities. Climate change is having a disproportionate effect on the physical and mental health of Black communities. Black Americans are more likely than white Americans to live in areas and housing that increase their susceptibility to climate-related health issues. And 65% of Black Americans report feeling anxious about climate change's impact. Through our Office of Climate Change and Health Equity and the Office of Environmental Justice, we're working with providers and community leaders to identify innovative approaches that empower communities to address the health consequences linked to climate change. Visit hhs.gov for more information and tune in next Thursday to hear from another HHS leader on how you can contribute to advancing better health for Black communities.
For more information,
okay.
hhs.gov/black
you could
month.
Okay, this is no, I don't know whether to laugh or cry about this. I mean, this is dribble. So first of all, this is the military. No wonder there's no recruitments. We got men in dresses with their little voices, and these we're supposed to salute, right? This is supposed to salute. This is ridiculous. And secondly, climate change, which I've been saying now for years, is a hoax because the carbon dioxide it's a minor molecule of the atmosphere, 0.04%. It does not affect the Earth's temperature as the turning knob of the Earth's temperature. It's all nonsense. All this critical theory is just completely hogwash. I mean, we're not engaging here in reality, people. This is really insanity. This is the nutcases who've taken over the asylum. And the OMH, or the Office of Mental Health, is worried about Black communities and climate change. Now, how much virtue signaling we got an admiral who's biologically a male in a dress talking about Blacks and climate change and being affected disproportionately for Black History Month. So, we're getting a lot of points here for the critical race theorists because they're scoring pretty high today. They got all this nonsense they're shoving down our throats about climate change, which is ridiculous, having to stop using hydrocarbon fuels, which will destroy the modern industrial state, letting men wearing dresses run the military. I think that this is, you better do a transgender parade down Fifth Avenue with these military than you could fight a war. No wonder recruitment's down. That and everything else they're jamming down the military's throats. And the whole concept here of the health issue around climate change fits so much into this World Health Organization's now move to have a new treaty, or maybe they don't call it a treaty, they call it a understanding or a protocol, which basically gives the World Health Organization the power to declare a health emergency on anything they decide is a health emergency, declare it's a pandemic, and lock down the world. Again, this insanity of these Satanists, which is what they are, wanting to destroy. And the theme I've written about extensively, Chris will show you the book I have, the how the truth about this cultural Maoism, this Neomarxism, which has pervaded all of our institutions. There's the book. And it's got a little warning on it. The warning is that I can read it. I always like put these warning stickers on the current books I'm writing about the truth about these things. It's a trilogy. First one was truth about energy, global warming, climate change. The warning says, read at your own risk. This definitive refutation of neo-Marxism, cultural Maoism, and anarchy cannot be ignored, regardless of how badly the left will want to do so. This is insanity, and it's intended to destroy. The cultural movement we're still going through now feels they have to destroy the modern industrial state. They have to destroy capitalism, destroy family, destroy God in order to create their utopia, where their utopia will be a utopia in which billions of people die because they think the world is overpopulated. So we're going to let people who think that we exhale carbon dioxide, so therefore we're the cause of our own, we're the blight on the world, we're destroying the world because we breathe. This insanity should not be allowed out on the streets. Instead, it's controlling our society right now, given the depth to which we've descended into this neo-Marxist agenda. Now, I want to cover several stories today, and the first one has to do with Donald Trump. There's been a huge reaction, and I'm pleased to see it finally, that people are saying with the woke agenda, we're going to do the same thing to New York City that we did to Budweiser. In other words, this is a Wayne Allen Root is writing this. And of course, he had a tie to Obama. He's never particularly liked Obama, but I guess he was associated with Obama in school. At any rate, he is saying that he was born in New York. He went to Columbia University in New York. His first apartment was in New York. He's always liked coming back to New York for business trips. Now he's sick of it. New York City has become a cesspool of mental illness, wokeness, communism, and hatred towards conservatives and patriots. Even worse, the Democratic politicians in New York suffer from Trump derangement syndrome. As a result, they've weaponized the New York government against President Trump in a way that represents a combination of Soviet KGB, East German Stasi, and Nazi Gestapo. Our Department of Justice has become a political enforcement unit. Of course, corruption, don't bother about Obama or don't bother about Hillary Clinton or private email server or a Clinton Foundation. Don't bother about Biden and his son. This is all business as normal. Well, what Wayne Allen Root is calling for is a boycott. In other words, don't go to the theater in New York. Call the theaters up and tell them you're not coming back. Don't go to the fancy restaurants. No Broadway. No more shopping sprees on Fifth Avenue. Just say no. And truckers are saying they're going to stop all deliveries and shipments to New York. So therefore, they're going to cut off the small businesses and suppliers that need restaurant supplies and everything else that they need on an ongoing basis. And let's see how well New York does with the hotels packed with immigrants, with the hotels becoming dangerous, with gangs controlling these immigrant-filled hotels. And the city's out of control. Gangs running around, carjackings in Washington, D.C. Our major cities are deteriorating fast. I was in Philadelphia recently, and I was shocked at how the roads have deteriorated, how much crime there is, how unsafe the city is, and looking terrible. I mean, they have not maintained the city. That's where I was in Dallas recently, too. And again, the city looks run down. The governments don't have the money to put into them because these governments are all going broke. A boycott in New York City, I think, will make a massive difference. And I think even the governor is worried about it because governors made statements about this, trying to say, if they want to treat Donald Trump this way, then New York can take a flyer. Because it's just the politics. If you want to live in a Marxist country, that's where we're headed. And that's got to stop. It's ridiculous that we're headed in this direction to the extent that we are and with the speed with which we're going. Now, I want to cover several stories along this theme today because it's really, I think, something we've got to start paying serious attention to. San Francisco has now appointed its first non-citizen to the Election Commission. Well, isn't that wonderful? So San Francisco now has decided, this was a story, it was in the Epic Times, and it was covered by Melanie Sun, and she is saying that the San Francisco Election Committee, for what is believed the first time in history, has appointed someone who is not a U.S. citizen, who isn't legally allowed to vote, to serve as an election official. Okay, so this Kelly Wong, an immigrant right advocate, native of Hong Kong, who arrived in the United States in 2019 for graduate studies. She was sworn in by the Board of Supervisors President Aaron Peskin during a ceremony at San Francisco City Hall after winning unanimous support from the board. Quote, "The appointment is a milestone for all immigrant and marginalized communities throughout San Francisco," Ms. Wong wrote in a LinkedIn post. "Representation matters. Thousands of immigrants living in the city hold stakes in politics. There's no better way to have us be represented than to serve in leadership positions. I'm deeply committed to ensuring that everyone, regardless of immigration status, has a seat at the table in shaping the future of our city, the war of our city." That'd be more appropriate. Look, this is ridiculous. What you have here is this shareholder idea, the stakeholder. It's another communist idea that comes into the management of corporations, for instance. In other words, corporations are run by boards and the shareholders who have an economic stake in the company. Well, of course, that offends communists. They don't want private property. They don't want it. They want equity. They want equal outcomes for everybody. So, you have marginal intelligence to be able to read. Well, you have just as much right to go to Harvard as anybody else, because why disadvantage you just because you lack certain skills intellectually? Well, excuse me, but universities are about favoring those who have skills intellectually. That's the whole purpose of advancing society. It's the whole purpose of productive work. But no, we have an agenda here where we have to have DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion. Well, how are you going to include all the different variations in human beings? No two human beings are alike. So that means everybody's a shareholder in everything? Just because they live in San Francisco doesn't mean that they have the right to vote or to be on the election committee. Because again, voting is a privilege of citizenship. But these ideas are, of course, oppressive because they are disadvantaging minorities. Well, who's a minority? The real agenda here is anti-white. The real agenda here is hate white supremacy. The Department of Justice is more interested about Catholics who like the Latin Mass. They're the terrorists. Anybody who doesn't agree with these people is marginalized or canceled. There's a cancel culture. It's also a cancer culture because it internally will rot its own base. These people can't argue. They can't defend themselves. All they can do is scream in your face. We've got a whole generation that has been brainwashed into this Neomarxism, and right now they want to run a cultural revolution where, like in Mao's day, with little red books, they run around and make everybody confess their white supremacy. You've got your white privilege. You've got to confess your white privilege. Well, that's what destroyed China after Mao took over. And billions of people have died worldwide over communism, and it will do so again. It's a death cult. Okay, so here we go, San Francisco having non-citizens coming in that they're doing the pro-democracy protests. This is true electoral representation because we've got so many here who are disadvantaged because they're not citizens. We've got to include them. They have to have a voice. No, they don't have to have a voice. They have to become citizens is what they have to do. Then they have a voice. Then they are voters. Okay, same as you can't show up at a board meeting or at a open session of the corporation, and when you're going to vote and say, well, I buy products from this company, so therefore I have the same rights as a shareholder. No, you don't. These are confusions of ideas, which is the intent of the destruction of language, the language confusion that is at the heart of this movement. transgender. Well, okay, so we don't have male and female anymore. That's binary. So we don't have any binaries. Good, bad. That's binary. There's all kinds of gradations in here. That's Satan talking, because you don't have clarity of thinking in which you can distinguish ideas that are opposites. There are ideas that are opposites. Okay, so good and bad, evil and saintly are different poles of how you behave in terms of other human beings and the value of human life, the value of life in general on this planet. What we're seeing here is a corruption of language that is a mind virus. Woke fundamentally is a mental illness. And that virus in the mind is extremely hard to get rid of. Okay, now another story that I thought, again, all these fit together in a theme here, that the Pentagon had said that the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion had been closed. So for the past year, those of us who have been following this issue were under the impression that the Pentagon closed its Office of DEI. Okay, but that seems not to be the case, because what has surfaced is the Pentagon has been putting these anti-white DEI programs in the K to 12 public schools since they've never stopped. So the radical curriculum was not dismantled. Open the Books found this out, which is a very good organization trying to do investigative work to expose lying and corruption within various organizations. And along with whistleblowers, they've investigated various nonprofit groups and members of Congress, pushing them to dismantle the DEI in the Pentagon's K-12 school system. What they found out was that this DEI system was stealthily embedded into the lesson plans and classrooms throughout the entire school system. They bamboozle the public with window dressing and congressional hearings while forcing woke extremism on the roughly 70,000 children of our military service members. That's what Open the Book says. Of course, this means lying at the top, and the DEI curriculum is largely a pro-Black Lives Matter, which is a Maoist organization, and other left-wing causes that generally are anti-white in nature. That's the point. The point is that they're radicalizing race to create divisions, and that, they believe, will fracture society and will cause a disintegration of the culture of capitalism. That's the intent. It comes out of the Frankfurt School. And again, if you want to see how these people the woke live in a different mental reality, I explore that deeply in this book. It takes a while to read the book, but if you really want to understand, these people are essentially living in a schizophrenic world. They deny objective reality. Reality for the woke is what you think it is. So therefore, you have a right to think of your sexuality as how you perform in sexuality. It's not whether you've got male or female organs. It's your attitude towards your sex. And what they're doing is indoctrinating kids down to kindergarten, saying that that's when they should be talked to about their sexuality and their gender. No, you should leave these kids alone. They haven't even experienced puberty. They probably won't for another decade. And you're talking to them about race and skin color, identity, privilege, injustice in our society. These are the things that divide a society. And the Marxists have known this since the revolution, since Karl Marx. It's a divisive, destructive, negative concept of the mind. And when it takes over, it only destroys. It does not produce a utopia. People march themselves into slavery. So children as young as 4 by the Pentagon here is luring them into the LGBTQ plus conversations with public school teachers. Why? Because elementary schools, according to the Pentagon, are the, quote, perfect time to, quote, really show students the diversity of the gender expression and the gender activity. So they want the kids to become transsexual. have sex change operations. The parents want to know about it. Parents disapprove. The state takes the children away from the parents. Insanity. Complete insanity. Okay, now I want to combine that with another story here, which is out here about the whole thing with a Harvard professor. And I watched a video on him today. This Harvard professor wrote a study. He's an economist. He's highly respected. He is a Harvard professor named Roland Fryer, Fryer. And he was at the University of Boston. He's a black scholar, by the way. He's black. And he did a study he hired 10 graduate student types of research assistants, and he put them out in communities to see if there were any racial differences in officer-involved shootings. Well, he found out that there was some racial discrimination in pushing or shoving against cars, but when it came to actual officer-involved shootings, he found out that there was no racial bias. Now, as soon as that was known, as he said, all hell broke loose. And people were, quote, losing their minds when they didn't like the result. Okay, the study found that police were over 2 times more likely to use physical force, such as manhandling or beating, against Black and Hispanic individuals compared to people from other races. On the other hand, the findings also revealed that police were 23.8% less inclined to use firearms against Black individuals and 8.5% less inclined to do so against Hispanic individuals compared to whites. Well, obviously, after George Floyd and all these other incidents, police officers know that they could ruin their careers by pulling a gun on these so-called people of color. I thought white was a color. Well, guess white's not a color anymore. So in other words, yes, police, I think, are probably more cautious. But yet the point is that this study in the woke environment of the university, this professor was told not to publish it because it would ruin his career. And he recounted the conversations he had with his colleagues at Harvard and said that, well, they liked the first part of the study because that made sense. But the second part of the study didn't make sense. Well, this professor actually hired a second set of research assistants and put them out in the field, and they came to the same conclusion the first set of research assistants did. So he felt he had a legitimate study. He saw it was a study with 150 pages, evidently, of appendix material. I'm sure it was thoroughly done. And the biggest conclusion of the study was yet on the most extreme use of force, officer-involved shootings, we are unable to detect any racial differences, neither the raw data or when accounting for controls. Well, the liberal elite at Harvard and around the world, in the university world, lost their minds. So therefore, Claudine Gay is gone at Harvard, the Black president of Harvard, who was readily engaged in plagiarism, even in her doctoral dissertation. And of course, that was okay for the woke group because, remember, there is no standard of truth. So stealing somebody else's work, well, why not? What's wrong with that? If it was good work and you just want to steal it, well, you're just affirming it. So this insanity destroys all basis of rational dialogue or thought because the boundaries are intentionally blurred. And when the boundaries are blurred, anything goes. Okay, so all these intersectionality. So if you're a woman, you're one. I've done this before. What woman? You're clearly oppressed. A Black woman got 2 points now. Black woman, transsexual, 3 points. Yes, women can be transsexuals too. 4, you had a past life. Your sexuality is a cat in ancient Egypt. There's another one. And point 5, you perhaps have history where your parents came from some slave country where the slaves were brought over by the slave traders to the United States. And so therefore you've really got the bonanza. You just hit the jackpot. because now we can get reparations for you on all these different levels. You've got all these intersectionalities. You're really at the top of the list. And so therefore you have to be included on the board. You have to be included everywhere because DEI, we don't care whether you've got the ability or the knowledge. What we care is you got the right skin color, you got all these right impressions. And so therefore, regardless of what you're capable of doing, we're just going to include you because of how you look. Okay, now this is insanity because you could infinitely draw distinctions. If people can have imaginary entities in their heads with which they assume this is my reality. Okay, this comes from the postmodernism, like Baudrillard, who's a French intellectual who said that, everything is a word game. And so therefore, we're living in a capitalist oppressive word game where the rules are against blacks because the Constitution was written by slaveholders who wanted to embed the principles of their white supremacy into the Constitution. It's ridiculous. The Constitution has been modified by the 13th and 14th Amendments, which essentially freed the slaves and said they had equal rights. Abraham Lincoln wrote the Declaration of Independence into the Constitution with the Gettysburg Address. I point this out in the book as well. He says that, all men are created equal. We're a country where that principle is the foundation of our freedoms. And the Civil War was a test whether any nation so conceived or so dedicated could long endure. Well, we're at that test again today. And this is probably the greatest challenge to it without a shot being fired because the universities, the press, the media have been taken over by this. And the intensity against Donald Trump is frightening. And that's what's got to stop. That's what's in fact going to, bring the war into the world in a way that we don't want to see. This last story, and then I want to cover a couple more points, but I'm doing one more story. I'm going to ask Chris to comment on what we've covered so far. Chris is still recovering from a bad cough, but I think he'll be okay today. I haven't wanted to push him for too much commentary. But this last story has to do with Alex Soros. And it's a good article, which is written by J.D. Rutger. I'm going to get it exactly right here. Let me just pull it up and look at the story. So it's the real reason Alex Soros is demanding more globalist money for Ukraine. And this is a story which I picked up from, let me just get the site in front of me. Yes, right here from J.D. Rucker, R-U-C-K-E-R. And it's on the libertydaily.com, which is an aggregator site that is pretty good. And the point is here that George and Alex Soros and the World Economic Forum, the United Nations, NATO, Council for Inclusive Capitalism, all these, the Atlantic Council, all these people view Ukraine as necessary to keep open because it is the center of corruption. It's being kept over in order to perpetuate money laundering. Now, most of the support right now for the Ukraine war is this military-industrial complex. And it's like the pharmaceutical companies got their payday during COVID. Ukraine is a payday for all of these arms manufacturers. When Ukraine, even Biden said, don't worry about this big budget deficit because that money's going to Alabama. It's not going to Ukraine. We're going to make the arms. So what Rucker's saying is, I'll read a paragraph here. For the globalist elite cabal, the stakes in Ukraine are far greater than making a quick buck. It is the cesspool of corruption from which they're able to launch their most important initiatives in Europe. This is why it's so important for Barack Obama and the deep state to initiate the color revolutions in Ukraine in 2014. It's why Alex Soros is working hard to keep money and weapons flowing. Now, these people don't necessarily believe that Ukraine is going to win. I think everybody understands that Russia is going to win. But the globalist groups like BlackRock, Vanguard, central banks, the International Monetary Fund, the Bank of International Settlements, all of these are want to keep the black hole open. You can have bioweapons built in Ukraine, and you get less scrutiny than communist China. Weapons can be brought in, and they're being diverted to whatever nation or terrorist organization suits the need of the globalists. And right now, Hamas and Hezbollah are getting a lot of military aid. All that equipment we left in Afghanistan, Alex Newman is out doing a very good article today. I saw him with a little video clip saying that the CIA has been penetrated by Marxists, maybe, and globalists, perhaps from the beginning. And he's right. Alan Dulles and his brother John Foster Dulles were globalists. They believed that we should have one world government. And that one world government they wanted was essentially Hitler's formulation, where you'd have a little bit of socialism for the masses. They'd get up to have the Autobahn and Volkswagens and maybe some government-paid vacations. But the society would be run by the multinational corporations, which across borders would have interlocking directorates, and it would be funded by Wall Street, with Hitler and his political elite working together to preserve the privileges of these multinational corporations. It would be a corporate-driven world with a little socialism. Remember, the Nazis were not on the right. They were National Socialists. And as such, they differed with the communists, and the communists believed there should not be any private property. That was the major difference. So Alex Soros, who's this Democratic mega donor, now the chairman of the Open Societies Foundation, and he's saying that we need to stand firm on Ukraine, because they want the corruption maintained. Remember, I caught HSBC laundering money massively 2011. They were creating accounts that were legitimate Social Security numbers for a person who existed with that Social Security number. They were running millions of dollars through the account, and then they closed the account with zero balance, so it didn't exist. And they were running literally billions of dollars for the drug cartels. Of course, the Treasury Department had to know about it because the Treasury Department is monitoring all electronic transfers of funds that occur every day in the United States. Probably we're monitoring them worldwide. The National Security Agency. We're collecting all kinds of data on individual citizens. And by the way, this FISA debate is back. And the move is to keep the FISA debate, keep the FISA rules pretty much like they are, so the FISA court can spy on U.S. citizens. That's what happened in the Russian collusion. We now know enough about the Russian collusion to know this was the FBI's counterintelligence division who went to Europe and found planted information that Trump was dealing with the Russians, and the Russians had stolen the emails from the Democratic National Party and given them to Julian Assange. Julian Assange is still in prison fighting extradition. His wife says if he's extradited, he'll die. And again, this deep state wants to imprison truth and kill truth. Tried to imprison me. They said I had the FBI and the Mueller investigation said I had a tie to Assange, and they were going to say I didn't. I had figured out on my own that Assange had Podesta's emails. They said if I didn't take a plea deal, they were going to bring me before a judge and jury in Washington, D.C., who would put me in jail. I'd be guilty. They'd find me guilty, and I'd be put in jail the rest of my life. I finally told them that I was not going to lie before God and before a judge, swearing to a lie to keep myself out of prison. They could just put me in prison the rest of my life, but I did not have a source with Julian Assange, and I wouldn't invent one so that they could get President Trump, which they would have done had I taken the plea deal. I didn't take the plea deal, and I was not indicted. But I did face these people off. Now, I want to end with a couple of themes here. I'm going to give Chris a chance to comment, but take a look at our sponsors, and please in my conclusion, I'm going to go to the economics of what we're dealing with, and I'm going to go to the fact that I think these nutcase monsters who are running the country and running the world now, with the exception possibly of Russia, which is pretty insane, want nuclear war. And I think they will cause nuclear war if that's what they have to do to prevent Trump from running. They'll cancel the election with a nuclear war. I think they're that insane. And I'm going to give you a couple endpoints which reinforce that theory. Chris, any comments before we kind of move to wrap up?
let's. I want to go back to that Rachel Levine video you played in the beginning. Something that was glossed over by her and probably by many people who are counting and laughing at this utterly ridiculous video. She referred to something called the Department of Environmental Justice.
Right.
Okay, this is why people in Argentina voted for Javier Milei, because he said he was going to take a sledgehammer and an axe to all these useless government departments. He's the bloated government that's wasting taxpayer money. Who in the heck needs a Department of Environmental Justice? What is it for?
You can't use hydrocarbon fuels. You can't have cows. You can't use fertilizer.
But it's basically
you have to eat the processed food the government produces. It's insanity. And yet that's what we're living under.
But it's a place to put these gender studies and ethnic studies graduates that have been indoctrinated through fake academic curricula to give them jobs. Basically, it's a way of justifying this whole thing.
We don't need no stinking reading, writing, and arithmetic.
There you go.
All right, I want to transition here at a couple of really serious points on the economics. And by the way, Chris, show the free book. They can get a copy of this book on how the coming global crash will create an historic gold rush. Swiss America. Dean Heskin co-authored it with me. You can get it at a toll-free number at Swiss America, 1-800-519-6268. Let me repeat that, 1-800-519-6268. And you should talk to Swiss America. There's a lot of stuff on our website. This Walking Liberty $50 offer is still available. And you get up to 250 of these coins. They're very high in silver, about 99%. And it's a loss leader for Swiss America. They're selling them to you up to 250 of these coins, about for what they're worth in silver. And it's one-time offer for new customers with Swiss America. This book, it's not terribly long, but it goes into the economic situation that we're in. And we are headed, I think, irrevocably, I don't think there's a pullback from this, into a massive global crash. It's just a matter of time until it happens. And I want to give you a couple of statistics here that really shocked me. I was writing about this over the weekend. And the statistics are showing that where our deficit is today and where our debt is today, and it's just at astronomical levels. So when you take a look at the U.S. Budget, we are racking up debt at an alarming rate. That we're finding that the huge amount of debt that we are generating and taking this world to this next level is, I think, astounding. So we are now at a point where we are generating more debt than GDP. That's astounding. How could that possibly be the case? But we are. And so therefore it's costing about $2.50 in debt to generate $1 in GDP. Ridiculous. And if we're going to live this way, we're going to be finding that increasingly we are in an environment where we're not possibly going to be able to sustain this level of debt. If we take a look at how much the debt is increasing, okay, so exponentially, we went to $1 trillion in the past. So at the end of January 2024, we crossed over to $34 trillion in debt, national debt. But the rate is increasing. So we increased $1 trillion in debt in the past 3 months, $2 trillion in the past 6 months, $4 trillion in the past 2 years, and $11 trillion in the past 4 years. So in the 20 years, from 2004 to 2024, our national debt increased 5 times, from $7.4 trillion in 2004 to $34 trillion in 2024. So when our national debt is increasing more than the gross domestic product, we're fooling ourselves to think that we've got economic growth. And what this means is that the Federal Reserve, operating under this progressive agenda, the modern monetary theory, is confiscating the value of our money. They're stealing the value of our money right from under us. So you still may think you've got a dollar, but what the dollar buys today is worth dramatically less than what it bought just a few months ago. Now, this is alarming, and it's going to inevitably produce a gold rush of massive proportions, because there's no real other solution when we start having economic decline. It happened before in 2008, 2009, when the subprime real estate market burst. Gold jumped to $1,426 an ounce, which was doubling. And then with COVID, it went to $2,074 an ounce, and it's challenging that level today. Gold today it's suppressed because the gold market tries to keep the price of gold low. They're not going to be able to do it for very much longer, because when the economic when the economic downturn hits, with the commercial real estate having to be refinanced. So gold today is at $2,017 an ounce. Gold has been trading above $2,000 an ounce regularly since really the beginning of the year. And so it's positioned for a massive increase. If you have some gold in your holdings, you'll have something that appreciates in value, and you have bought it with dollars that are about to depreciate in value. It's a good idea. Please talk to Swiss America on this subject, and look at our other sponsors. My Vital C. I'm taking this Carbon 60. We will have, again, a new book we're going to be introducing here as well on the Carbon 60, which is this book, Live Longer and Better. I wrote it with Chris Burries, who's the head of myvitalc.com. And we are launching some telemedicine sites. We will have in the second quarter, getlongevitymeds.com. I will also have a getrxmeds.com launched, I believe, at the beginning of March. Lastly, on nuclear war, what I see happening is that, and this came out of Tucker Carlson's interview with Putin, and the interview that Medvedev gave just before the Tucker Carlson interview, which Medvedev said that if the NATO is pushed to get involved in the Ukraine war, more than just supplying weapons, if that intensity increases, you're going to find that Russia said we will be at war with NATO, and that will lead to a nuclear holocaust. And I see that these nutcases who want death, depopulation, Harari, who's now, they say, just an agenda setter for the World Economic Forum, saying we are useless human beings. There's no need for us. The wars are rampant, and Israel is positioning now and giving out warnings that it is going to move into the southern cities, where there are still about 1 million civilians. Israel's trying to get them out. Palestinians use the civilians to be murdered as an evidence that Israel is brutal and conducting genocide. And with this woke agenda, anti-Semitism is the current predominant idea in the schools, the universities. Hamas is being celebrated around the world, despite the brutal attack Hamas launched October 7th on Israel, which is being forgotten. Well, Netanyahu is going to preserve the security of Israel, and I believe he will not stop until Hamas is destroyed in Gaza, and until Israel's got firm control of these tunnels and other facilities. Israel's going to produce security for the citizens of Israel when the rest of the world, including the Biden administration, is abandoning Israel. A world that abandons Israel is going to abandon God. I believe that biblically, when Harry Truman decided in 1948 that the United Nations should vote to divide Palestine at that time, that the State of Israel was created. And he knew that the State Department opposed that. He knew that the military opposed it. But he believed he had a biblical decision to make because biblically, God had said that the Jewish people would be reunited, the diaspora would come back to Israel, and the State of Israel would be created as a Jewish state. that happened. And I look to Ezekiel 37:38, which certainly looks like a war between Gog, Magog, and Israel and Iran, combined with Russia. Russia and China are now pushed into an alliance with Iran. Iran is pushing for nuclear weapons. Obama and Biden have done, John Kerry have done everything they can to give a green light to Iran. We've returned billions of dollars to Iran, easing sanctions. Iran is back in the oil business. Iran is taking this military equipment, including probably what we left in Afghanistan, and we now have not only Hezbollah funded by Iran and Hamas, so that's Lebanon and the Gaza, also the West Bank that has not broken out into violence yet, but we've had these Houthi rebels in Yemen who are attacking shipping in the Red Sea. It's disrupted. We got a regional war going on. Iranian Revolutionary Guard have attacked U.S. military bases in Iraq and Syria. That war is regional already. Russia has just taken another major city in the eastern part of Ukraine. They did that over the weekend. Russia is firmly in control of the two regions Russia wants to control, Donetsk and Donbass. Those are traditionally Russian areas of Ukraine. And the whole issue here of 2013, 2014, when Soros and our State Department destabilized Ukraine by holding this Maidan rebellion, which they staged a color revolution like Obama was doing across North Africa to get rid of Yanukovych, who was a duly elected president of Ukraine, but he was Russian oriented. He fled to Russia. And then they put in Poroshenko, who was favoring NATO. And our State Department, Victoria Nuland, has been pushing to expand NATO as if these people want nuclear war. And it's frightening. I never thought in my lifetime I would be seriously contemplating that a nuclear war was possible. But today I'm taking it into consideration. Now I want to wrap up by saying that in the end, God always wins, and God is going to win here too. We are engaged in a final battle. I do see signs that this is the final battle, is apocalypse on the edge. We're edging towards it. Probably we're edging toward it in a speeding vehicle. It keeps accelerating the rate in which this insanity is perpetuated. The satanic element of this cannot be overlooked. And these people hate God. They hate life. They hate themselves. And they're destructive. The Democratic Party is going to run with a major theme on the rights of a woman to choose, which means kill babies. How can we have a major political party running for election when this brutal cutting apart of babies in wombs, destroying life that only God can create? If we start celebrating that, then we put God in the center of the public square. Well, we've thrown God out and we put Beelzebub in the center of the public square. America can't survive abandoning God. It's time for a massive revival. And the only solution I can see is 2 Chronicles 7:11. We need to begin a revival, begins with repentance. Got to get down on our knees and ask God to forgive us for allowing the world to get to this point. Taking God out of our schools, of our hearts, our marriages, to allow, the entire insanity of abortion to have free reign, which is what the left wants, to ignore God and say you can't have, church and state have to be completely separated unless it's Satan. Then you can have a Satan club in the high school. Nonsense. In the end, God will win. I don't believe God created the human race to fail. This place does have rules, despite what the left says. There is objective reality. There is right and wrong. And God will set that straight one way or the other. The judgment of God, I think, will be severe. But I don't believe God created us to fail. God did not create this place to fail. God created this place to succeed. The final battle will be won, but only if we join in it first. So please join me, Spirit of 2 Chronicles 7:14, and God will hear our prayer and heal our land. It's Dr. Jerome Corsi, thetruthcentral.com. Today is Monday, February 19th, 2024. We'll be back tomorrow. Thank you for joining us. God bless.